I never expected a 3 a.m. knock on my apartment door would turn into one of the most intense conversations of my life. Seriously, I was half asleep when I heard it. This soft, hesitant tapping that almost sounded like someone was second-guessing whether to knock at all. When I swung the door open, there he was. Jake, my coworker from the marketing department, looking like he'd just sprinted across town in a panic but still trying to act casual about it. Jake and I had always been friendly in the work sense. You know, the kind of small talk that happens around the water cooler or over bad office coffee. Never really anything personal. I knew he was quiet, maybe a bit guarded, but nothing in my experience suggested he'd ever drop by my place at an ungodly hour. Especially not bearing the kind of expression that said, "I'm about to tell you something huge, and I'm not sure how you'll take it." So, he said, voice low enough that I almost didn't catch it, "Can I come in? I really need to talk." I did what any decent human would do. I stepped aside and let him in, still rubbing the sleep out of my eyes and wondering what the hell was going on. We sat down on my worn-out couch, the one with the little tear near the seam that I'd been meaning to fix for months. Jake fidgeted with the hem of his hoodie like he was trying to anchor himself, and after a long pause, he just blurted it out. "I'm gay," he said. No build-up, no dramatic preamble, just those 3 words, like they were facts he'd been carrying around for years and maybe finally decided to unload. I blinked. I mean, this was a surprise, sure, but honestly, it also felt like the kind of thing you want someone to trust you enough to share. And here he was, in my living room, at 3 in the morning, trusting me with that truth. But then came the curveball. He looked up at me, eyes searching, vulnerable, and asked, "Can you prove you're safe? I mean, like really safe to know this about?" That moment hit me hard because, in his world, this wasn't just some casual confession. It was a risk. A bet on trust that could go seriously wrong. And somehow, I knew this was the start of something way more than just a late-night heart-to-heart. I didn't have an answer right away, but I knew I had to try. Prove I'm safe? I repeated, honestly caught off guard. I mean, I'd known people who came out in all sorts of ways, at parties, over text, or even just casually dropping it in conversation. But this? It felt different. More raw. Like the stakes were real. Jake nodded, biting his lower lip. "Yeah, I've had bad experiences. People I trusted who didn't handle it well. Made me feel like I was some kind of project, or, worse, a danger or a joke. So before I can even breathe easier telling someone, I need to know they get it. That they're not going to freak out or treat me like I'm contagious or something." Man, that hit me right in the chest. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but it made sense. His words stirred something protective in me, like I suddenly understood how fragile this moment was for him. I took a breath, leaned forward a little. "Jake, I'm not about to treat you like a science experiment or gossip material. I can't speak for everyone, but here, you're safe. Like, really safe. And if you want, I'm here to listen, no judgment." He gave a small, almost grateful smile, and that's when I noticed how tired he looked, like he'd been carrying this weight for way too long. We sat there for a minute, the silence filled with the quiet hum of the city outside my window. Then, almost hesitantly, Jake started talking about his family, about how coming out at work felt impossible, about the nights spent pretending to be someone he wasn't just to avoid questions. His voice cracked once or twice, but he kept going. I didn't interrupt much, just nodded, made space for him to say what he needed to say. Somewhere between his stories, I realized how little I truly knew about the person I'd been saying hey to in the elevator for the past year. When he finally paused, I said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. Seriously." He shrugged, looking a little embarrassed. "It's not like I'm expecting a parade or anything. Just wanted you to know." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a confession, it was an invitation. To be someone safe in his world. To be someone ready to stand by him when the rest of the world might not. Then, out of nowhere, Jake asked something that surprised me even more. "Do you want to hang out? Like, outside of work? I mean, I know it's late, but maybe tomorrow or when you're free." I blinked, heart doing this weird little flip, because, yeah, I liked Jake more than I'd admitted to myself before. And the idea of spending time with him, knowing this new side of him, somehow felt like a chance to connect on a level one hadn't expected. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." He smiled, this time bigger, more real. "Cool. I'll text you." We sat there for a few more minutes, talking about everything and nothing, the city lights painting shadows on the walls. When he finally left, I closed the door and leaned against it, a weird mix of adrenaline and calm washing over me. That 3 a.m. knock turned my whole world upside down in a way I wasn't ready for, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what I needed. The next day felt like I was walking around in a fog. I kept replaying that conversation over and over. Jake's voice, the way his eyes searched mine, the way he asked if I was safe. That question stuck with me. What did it really mean to be safe for someone like him? How do you prove that without coming off like you're making it a test? When my phone buzzed mid-afternoon, I almost dropped it. It was Jake. "Coffee? Somewhere chill?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, let's do it." We met at this quiet little coffee shop a few blocks from work, the kind of place that smelled like fresh beans and old books, with soft indie music playing low in the background. Jake was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window, looking a little more relaxed than the night before, but still carrying that same guarded vibe. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey," he smiled, setting down his cup. "Thanks for doing this." I shrugged. "Thanks for asking." We spent the next hour talking. Really talking, not just about work stuff, or the usual small talk. He told me about how he'd always felt different growing up, how hard it was to figure out who he was without worrying about what people would say. I shared some stuff too, about my own struggles with opening up, how I'd never had anyone to tell those parts of me to. At some point, the conversation drifted toward what safe meant to us. Jake said that for him, safe was more than just being non-judgmental. It was about being consistent, being someone you could count on, even when things got messy. It hit me how fragile that kind of trust was, how easily it could be broken. "I guess that's why I came to you at 3 a.m., he said quietly, because I thought maybe you could be that person." There it was again, the vulnerability, the hope. I could feel it like a pulse between us. I reached across the table and gave his hand a quick squeeze. "I want to be that for you, Jake. I'm serious." He looked at me for a long beat, then nodded. "Me too." That afternoon kicked off something that I didn't really expect, but also didn't want to ignore. We started hanging out more. After work dinners, weekend walks in the park, those little moments where you just sit and talk about everything and nothing. Every time I saw him, I felt like I was learning a new part of the story he'd been holding inside. One evening, we found ourselves at a dive bar downtown, sitting close enough that I could smell the faint scent of his cologne mixed with the remnants of his day. The place was loud, crowded, but somehow we made our own quiet space. Jake turned to me with a half-shy grin. "I don't know if I ever told you this, but I've always been scared that if I came out, I'd lose the people around me." I nodded. "Yeah, that fear's real." He looked down at his glass, swirling the ice. "But with you, I feel like it's different. Like, maybe I don't have to be scared anymore." In that moment, I realized something else. This wasn't just about being safe for Jake. It was about me too. About being brave enough to let someone in, to be part of something real. I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his face. "You don't have to be scared." "Not here." He smiled, and the way his eyes met mine made me feel like we were the only two people in the world. That night, walking him back to his place, I felt this strange mix of excitement and tenderness swirling inside me. When he stopped outside his door, he looked up at me and said, "Thanks for being safe." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words. "Always." And with that, he slipped inside, leaving me standing there with a heart suddenly full and a mind buzzing with possibilities. I knew this was just the beginning, and honestly, I couldn't wait to see where it would go. In the days that followed, things between Jake and me started to feel like this quiet, unfolding secret that neither of us was rushing to define too quickly. I'd catch him glancing my way during meetings, that subtle smile tugging at the corner of his mouth like he was holding something in. And when we were alone, the conversations deepened, touching on dreams, fears, the stuff that usually stays locked behind small talk. One evening, after work, Jake invited me over to his place. It was cozy, cluttered in the most endearing way, with books piled high and a half-finished painting leaning against a wall. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something woodsy. I felt an odd kind of comfort stepping into his space. This was a side of him I hadn't seen yet. He offered me a beer, and we sat on his couch, the city lights twinkling through the window behind us. I was about to ask him more about his painting when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then hesitated, before turning it off and setting it aside. "Sometimes, I just need to cut the noise," he said softly. I nodded, understanding more than he realized. We sat there in a comfortable silence before he finally spoke. "Can I tell you something? It's kind of scary." "Hey, you can tell me anything," I said, meaning it. He took a shaky breath. "I haven't really told many people about my family. They're pretty old-fashioned. Coming out to them? I'm not sure they'd get it. I'm scared it might break something." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I could see the vulnerability etched in his face, the fear of rejection, the crushing weight of expectations. "I get that," I said. "Family can be complicated, but you're not alone in this." He smiled faintly. "Thanks. It means a lot to hear you say that." We ended up talking for hours, the kind of conversation that stitches people closer together. When I finally left, the night was thick with possibilities and unspoken promises. The next week at work was a blur of stolen moments. Quick lunches, lingering goodbyes by the elevator, texts that made me grin like an idiot. One afternoon, Jake asked if I wanted to join him at a gallery opening. He said it was a friend's show, and honestly, I was curious. The gallery was buzzing with people, the kind of crowd that felt both intimidating and electric. Jake seemed at ease, weaving through the crowd like he belonged. I followed, trying to match his confidence, as we stood in front of one painting, a swirl of blues and grays that somehow felt like a storm and calm all at once. Jake turned to me. "I want you to meet someone," he said, his voice a little nervous. Before I could ask who, he led me across the room to a guy with a warm smile and eyes that crinkled at the edges. "Alex, this is the guy that first told you about." My heart did that stupid flip again. Suddenly, the night felt charged, like I was stepping into a new chapter. Alex shook my hand firmly. "Heard a lot about you." Jake laughed softly. "Mostly good stuff, I swear." We spent the evening talking, and for the first time, I saw Jake in a new light. Not just as my coworker or the guy who came out to me at 3 a.m., but someone whose world was expanding and who was inviting me along. Later, as Jake and I walked back to my place under a sky heavy with stars, he reached out and took my hand. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a simple, steady grip, but it said more than words could. "You're safe with me too," I told him quietly. He squeezed my hand and smiled. I know. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that safe wasn't just about protection from the world. It was about finding someone who could hold your truths without flinching. Someone who could stand beside you even in the dark. And with Jake, I finally felt like I was standing in the light. Over the next couple of weeks, something shifted between Jake and me. It wasn't an overnight leap or a sudden confession of love. It was more like the steady click of a lock, turning until the door between us was finally open. We started texting more. Little things, jokes, song recommendations, and somehow those tiny exchanges made the days at work feel less gray. One Friday evening, Jake invited me to this little rooftop party at a friend's apartment. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I arrived, the city lights stretched endlessly around us, and the air smelled like summer and something faintly floral. Jake looked effortless in the low light, laughing with people I'd never met but already felt connected to because of him. We found a quieter corner, away from the music and chatter, and he looked at me like he was trying to decide something. "You ever been out like this before?" "With all this?" he asked, gesturing vaguely to the group. I shook my head. "Not really. I mean, I've been to parties, but nothing like this. It's kind of amazing." He smiled, the kind of smile that scrapes away the last of your defenses. It's scary sometimes, you know? Feeling like you don't just exist in a bubble at work or at home. Like people actually see you. I nodded slowly, understanding more than I let on. I get that. It's like stepping into the light and hoping it doesn't burn you. He laughed softly. Yeah, exactly. We leaned against the railing, looking out over the city, the noise of the party melting into the background. A few minutes later, Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and then back at me, hesitating. It's my mom, he muttered. My heart tightened. Do you want to talk about it? He ran a hand through his hair. She's been weird since I told her I'm gay. Like, not outright hostile, but distant. Like I'm some kind of disappointment she's not sure how to deal with. I reached out and squeezed his shoulder gently. That please mess, but you're not alone in that. He looked at me, eyes shining a little. That's why you being safe means so much. Because with you, I don't have to explain or defend who I am. I swallowed hard. I want to keep being that for you, Jake. No matter what. He smiled, real, big, unguarded, and for a moment the city felt smaller, like just the two of us existed on that rooftop. After the party, we walked back together, the night cool and still. Jake stopped in front of his building and looked up at me. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. Anytime, I replied. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning with thoughts about Jake, the fragility of trust, and how much I wanted to be part of his world. Not just as a coworker or a friend, but something more. The next day at work, things felt different. Jake caught me in the hallway, eyes bright but serious. Got a minute? He asked. We ended up in the break room, away from prying ears. I've been thinking, he started, about how this thing between us is kind of new and maybe a little scary. But I want to figure it out. See where it goes. If you want to. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Yeah, I want that too. He laughed nervously. Good, because I'm terrible at figuring these things out on my own. We agreed to take it slow, no pressure, just two people navigating this new connection. Over the next few days, we found ourselves stealing moments, late-night texts, quick coffee breaks, lingering glances across meetings. Every time felt like a small victory, like we were building something steady and real. One Thursday evening, Jake invited me over for dinner. He cooked, well, attempted to cook, and we ended up laughing over burnt vegetables and a bottle of wine. The night stretched lazily between us, conversations meandering from favorite movies to worst dating stories. At one point, he looked at me with a softness that made my chest ache. I'm glad I knocked on your door that night, he said. Me too, I replied, reaching out to brush his hand. In that moment, everything felt possible. The fear, the uncertainty, the past struggles, they all seemed like parts of a story that was finally unfolding the way it was supposed to. And as I looked at Jake, smiling in the warm glow of my apartment, I realized that being safe wasn't just about protection. It was about trust, about opening up when it's scary, and about finding someone who will catch you when you fall. And with him, I was ready to take that leap. After that night at my place, things started to feel more real between us. Like the walls that kept us cautious and reserved were slowly coming down. It wasn't dramatic or rushed, more like we were both figuring out what we wanted, one small step at a time. I kept replaying how his hand felt in mine, the nervous way he'd looked at me, and that quiet gratitude in his voice when he said he was glad he knocked on my door at 3 a.m. A few days later, Jake and I found ourselves pacing the same tightrope of newness and uncertainty all over again, but this time with a little more courage. He texted me late one afternoon, asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I didn't hesitate. We met at a small taco place not far from work, the kind of place with neon signs and mismatched chairs. There was a buzz of life around us, but we found our little bubble pretty easily. As we ate, our conversation was easy, talking about the worst movies we'd ever seen, our favorite guilty pleasure songs, and little quirks we barely admitted to anyone else. Eventually, Jake grew quieter. He pushed his taco around his plate without really eating. Can I ask you something? He said finally, eyes locked on mine. Of course. Do you ever get scared? Like, about what this could mean? About what it could become? I thought about it. The truth was, yeah, I'd been scared. Scared of getting hurt, of messing things up, of the whole complicated dance, of opening up to someone when you're not sure they'll catch you. But I also knew that if I didn't take the risk, I'd regret it. I do, I admitted, but I think it's worth it, you know, scared or not. He nodded slowly, relief washing over his face. Me too. After dinner, we walked to a nearby park, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows. The city felt quieter there, like we'd slipped through a crack in the noise. We found a bench and sat side by side. I could feel the electricity in the air, that mix of comfort and something new. Jake turned to me and said, "I want you to meet my sister." My heart skipped. Really? Yeah, she's the only person I've come out to fully so far. She's been amazing. I think if you met her, it'd mean a lot. I smiled, touched by how much this meant to him. I'd like that. A week later, we found ourselves in Jake's sister's living room, the walls lined with photos and warm light filling the space. She was easy to talk to, open, kind, and genuinely happy to meet me. Watching Jake relax around her made me realize just how much he'd been holding back before, and how this small circle of trust was growing. After that visit, things between Jake and me settled into a rhythm that felt natural. We still had fears and awkward moments, but they were quieter now, outweighed by the growing connection. One night, a few weeks later, Jake and I were sitting on my couch, the city lights twinkling outside the window. I reached out, fingers brushing his hand, and he didn't pull away. "I'm glad you came to me that night," I said softly. "You gave me a chance to be someone safe for you." He smiled, eyes bright. "And you've been exactly that." We sat there in silence, the kind that didn't need words. In that quiet, I realized that sometimes being safe isn't about never feeling scared or vulnerable. It's about finding someone who makes those fears easier to carry. And with Jake, I felt like I'd found that person. After that night on my couch, things between Jake and me really started to feel like they were moving forward. Not in a flashy overnight way, but in that steady, meaningful way that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I was learning more about him, about the parts he usually kept tucked away, and the more I learned, the more I wanted to be there. Not just as a friend or coworker, but something more. One Friday afternoon, Jake messaged me out of the blue. "Want to grab a drink after work? There's this new place I've been meaning to check out." I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, sounds good." We met up at the bar, a cozy spot with warm lighting and wooden tables, the kind of place where you actually want to linger. We slid into a booth near the back, away from the music and chatter, and ordered a couple of beers. We fell into an easy rhythm, talking about everything and nothing. Work stuff, weekend plans, favorite music. But as the night went on, the conversation grew quieter, more serious. Jake looked at me, his eyes searching. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Shoot. Have you ever been in a relationship? Like a real one?" I laughed, a little embarrassed. "Not really. I've had a few things here and there, but nothing I'd call serious." "You?" He shrugged. "Same. I guess I've been too scared to let someone in." I nodded, feeling a little thrill that we were sharing this vulnerable space. Maybe we're both just waiting for the right person. He smiled, this time softer, more genuine. "Yeah, maybe." We talked late into the night, the kind of conversation where time disappears and you're just two people connecting on a deeper level. When the bar started to empty out, Jake hesitated before saying, "Do you want to come back to my place? I mean, only if you want." I could feel my heart pounding, the kind of nervous excitement that makes your palms sweat. "Yeah, I'd like that." Back at his apartment, the city skyline twinkled through the window. We sat close on the couch, the air thick with a quiet tension neither of us wanted to rush. Jake reached out and took my hand, his fingers warm and steady. "You're safe with me," I whispered. He smiled, that same hopeful smile that had pulled me in from the start. "And you're safe with me." That night felt like the start of something real, something neither of us had dared to hope for, but both needed desperately. Over the next few weeks, we settled into a routine. Dinners, movie nights, quiet mornings with coffee, and shared playlists. We talked about our fears, our hopes, the messy parts of ourselves we'd both tried to hide. One Sunday afternoon, Jake invited me to go hiking with him. We drove out to a nearby trail, the air crisp with the promise of fall. As we walked, the trees aflame with orange and gold. We talked about everything from childhood memories to the future we both secretly dreamed of. At the summit, we sat side by side, taking in the view. Jake turned to me and said, "I never thought I'd find someone I could be this honest with." I squeezed his hand. "Me neither." We sat there for a long time, the silence comfortable and full of meaning. It was in that moment I realized how much I wanted this, to be someone safe for Jake, and for him to be the same for me. As we drove back to the city, I felt a quiet joy settle in my chest. The path ahead wasn't always going to be easy, but with Jake by my side, I was ready to face whatever came. Because sometimes, being safe isn't just about protection. It's about trust and hope and finding a home in someone else's heart. A few months later, I found myself standing outside Jake's apartment, a little nervous, but mostly excited. We'd come a long way since that 3 a.m. knock, the late-night confession, the awkward first hangouts, and all the conversations in between that had slowly built something real. Tonight felt different though, like we were on the edge of something new. Jake opened the door with that familiar shy smile, and I stepped inside, feeling the warmth of his space and, more importantly, of him. We sat on the couch, a quiet evening stretching ahead of us, the kind where you don't need words to fill the space. After a while, Jake reached over and took my hand. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about how scared I was to tell you who I really am, and how lucky I feel that you didn't run." I squeezed his hand, smiling. "You're not just safe with me. You're home." He looked at me, eyes full of something I'd come to recognize as hope. "I don't want to hide anymore. Not from you, not from anyone." That moment felt like everything. The fear, the trust, the journey we'd been on, all coming together. I leaned in and kissed him gently, the kind of kiss that says, "I'm here. We're here." Afterwards, we talked about the future, not in sweeping declarations, but in honest, small hopes. About introducing each other to more of our worlds, about being there when things got hard, about taking it one day at a time. Walking home later that night, I looked up at the stars and felt a quiet peace settle over me. Life was unpredictable, messy, and sometimes scary, but with Jake, I knew I had something steady. A safe place where I could be myself, flaws and all, and maybe that's what love really is. Not fireworks or grand gestures, but the simple, brave choice to be safe with someone else. To trust them with your truth and hold space for theirs. As I closed my door behind me, I smiled, knowing that no matter what, I wasn't alone anymore. And that felt like everything.